What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 67. It is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard, who is half focused on the Wolves game, half here with me. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Aside from getting older and feeling older, I'm good. Yep, the Wolves are playing, so that is definitely on back there. And I'll glance up at the score and for any fun shenanigans. It's a fun time in the NBA right now because it's like trade deadline eve,
So
and so
can
we've
I?
got
So you are a basketball guy first, right? So yeah, trade deadline eve, as you say, crazy Jimmy Butler trade just this evening. I gotta
yep,
get, and we have so much that we're gonna try and dig into today. So I don't
yep.
want to get too in the weeds, but can I get like two sentences from you on the Luca AD trade?
Well, it's funny because I was about to go to bed, and my 16-year-old son comes downstairs, and he's like, "Good, you're not sleeping." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "You'll never believe it." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "When I say it, you'll never believe it." I'm like,
That's
"Just tell me,
awesome.
like, what happened?" And he's like, "There was a trade." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Luca got traded." I'm like, "No, he didn't." And so I'm like, "Give me your phone," because I thought it was one of those, fake trades.
Yeah,
And I'm like, "Man, that's really Shams that tweeted that. Maybe he got hacked." And
yeah.
then it was like, "Nope, I didn't get hacked." I don't I don't understand what Dallas is thinking. Like, they have to absolutely hate Luca. The GM has to absolutely hate Luca, or just be under the impression strongly that there was no chance that he was going to resign.
Yep.
And that's what he kind of alluded to, that it was going to be a crazy offseason. He was just getting ahead of it. But now you got Kyrie and Anthony Davis, and you got some good like
That's
parts
some
of
good young players, right?
pieces around the edges, but
Yeah.
you don't give up, in my opinion, a guy that was like had top 5 trade value for Anthony Davis and a future first round pick. Like, that just, it doesn't make sense. And so, like, my boys are big basketball fans,
Mm-hmm.
and I make a comment about, I don't remember even who getting traded, and my son's like, "Well, that's not going to happen." And I'm like, "Dude, a week ago, if I would have said list the top 5 guys that will never get traded, Wemby's number 1 for
Yeah.
sure, and then Luca probably would have been number 2, like Luca, Shea, people in that region."
Yep.
And so I'm like, at this point, anybody could get traded, and it's kind of what makes this time in the NBA like fun. I mean, you see this in Major League Baseball,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see like the best players getting traded from contenders. Like, it's
Yeah.
just it's a weird dynamic. So um, yeah, I follow it pretty closely. I'm obviously following the Timberwolves really closely. I don't think they'll make any like big moves. They're kind of limited being over the second apron, and they do have an extra roster spot, so they could make a move. I think Julius Randle being out for a while doesn't help because he would be the
Right.
the most likely guy to move. But you suggested that they trade for KD. The only way they could trade for KD is if they like match contracts, because they can't like they can't trade multiple guys to have their contracts add up. And so it makes it a very, very unlikely thing. They'd have to move a bunch of contracts to get under, and um, it's not like it's 100% impossible, but it would take a lot of work to get to that point. It'd be sweet, but it's just not realistic.
Right on. Well, we'll pay attention to alerts. We've got passing bombs dropping left, right, and center. Also, Pete Alonso re-signing with the Mets literally seconds ago as we're jumping on here. But we're gonna jump in, Jeremy. If there's anything basketball or um, baseball related that you get alerts for, jump in, because I feel like it's been a busy day or so, and it will probably continue to be so as the evening goes on. Housekeeping before we jump into a packed agenda for today. If you can support the podcast, the best ways to do that are by liking and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform of choice. We have a YouTube where we post all of our videos, all of our content. If that's your thing, the handle is at Destination the Show. For questions, we love getting listener questions. Feel free to reach out to us, via social media. Twitter or Blue Sky are the best ways to get a hold of us. You can also send us an email if that's your thing. The email address is destinationtheshow@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, especially as we are gearing up for the start of spring training, and especially as the Twins are finally in the game. So, before we jump into our main topic for the day, Jeremy, we're going to do a roundup of what has been a busy week and certainly a busy few days for the teams that we cover. We're actually going to start here with the Blue Jays. So I want to get your take on this. Blue Jays made a move in the last week, signing veteran, future Hall of Fame pitcher Max Scherzer to a 1-year, $15.5 million contract. We've talked a lot on our show about how the Blue Jays are often maybe perceived as the bridesmaid for a bunch of these free agent deals. They bring in Scherzer to strengthen the back end of what is a pretty solid rotation. You've got Gausman, Brios, Chris Bassett, Francis Bowden, or Bowden Francis, rather. So your take on Max Scherzer to the Jays. Good move. What say you?
Well, I think at this point in his career, it's worth taking the risk because, like you mentioned, future Hall of Famer, and we've seen pitchers do this thing where they get older and you think they're washed, and then all of a sudden they're not. And Scherzer hasn't thrown 200 innings in a year since 2018, so it's been a while. But it wasn't that long ago in 2021 when he struck out 236 and 180 innings. He threw 150 innings as recently as 2023. And so there's always a chance that Max Scherzer can go back to being at least maybe not 100% a former Max Scherzer, but at least be a guy that is like, man, he's on a roll right now. Mm-hmm. And for $15 million, that's the going rate for a starting pitcher.
Yep.
So it's not even that they're committing a ton into the future. If the Twins would have given $15 million for Max Scherzer, I would have been like, let's go, Max Scherzer. So I do like it. I do like that move for Toronto. It's a 1-year deal. And as I've always said, there's not a bad 1-year deal, because at any time in this deal, if it's not working, you can cut ties. And the ceiling on this, despite the fact that he's 40, it's a different sort of ceiling, right? But the ceiling on this could be very good, and you're not going to count on him to be the number one guy. But I'm a Max Scherzer fan. I think he's fun to watch. I think he's a creepy looking dude. He looks like two guys. Right, the left side of his face looks like one guy. The right side of his face looks like another guy. But he's been really good in his career, and maybe it's because like these guys are my age, that I hold on to the Verlanders and the Scherzers of the world. But I love it for the Blue Jays. And I don't know how you feel about this, but it's easy to hate the Yankees. It's easy to hate the Red Sox. And the Blue Jays, they're just like that team in the East that they're not, and the Orioles and the Rays, I guess they're the same. But I love it for Toronto. I hope he's great, and we'll see what happens.
I love the Blue Jays, dude, and like we've touched on this a little bit, but I enjoy the Blue Jays. I like them to be successful, mostly at the expense of certain other teams in the AL East. But also, that city will get super into it if their team is good, and I always think that's really fun. And something I want to touch on here that you alluded to, right, with there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal comment, which is something that we always discuss. And I feel like that is maybe particularly relevant to a team like Toronto, because if they are struggling midway through the season, which seems like there's a decent chance of that happening given just the strength of the other teams in their division, Scherzer has still, I think, enough, obviously name recognition, but like enough in the tank that he's a kind of guy that a contending team will trade for, right, to bolster their rotation for the stretch run. Someone you could see maybe coming in relief in the playoffs, and a team maybe deploying him in a creative way. So I guess my last question on Scherzer that I'm curious for your take on is, do you think he ends the season with the Blue Jays?
I would I would think so. Yes. A lot of things would have to line up poorly for Toronto and really well
Hmm.
for Max Scherzer for him to not. Right. I mean, if he's horrible and Toronto's horrible, I don't think there's a ton of value. Maybe he gets dealt. If Toronto's good, he's not getting dealt. Um, I mean, it's certainly possible, just from the perspective of it's a 1 year deal, and those guys are easy to move, and he's Max Scherzer, so
Right.
there can always be a market. But I mean, if I had to guess, I would say, yeah, he'll be back with, or he'll be with the Blue Jays for the duration of the year.
Okay. Right on. Well, I was going to ask you if that's it for the Jays, if there's more coming. Pete Alonso was the guy that they're most closely linked with, who was still a free agent, but looks like he's re-signing with the Mets. So we will move on. Jeremy, the next team I want to talk with you about a little bit is the Twins. And
Okay.
the Twins have made multiple moves in consecutive days, which is honestly staggering, surprising. It's been such a slow off season. We joked about it pretty much for the duration. We're going to start and go in order here. The Twins signed left-handed pitcher Denny Coloumbe to a 1-year, $3 million deal on Monday. We're taking a look here at his Fangraphs page. And what we see here is a guy who's just been a really effective left-handed reliever, particularly in recent seasons with Baltimore. He is 35 years old. He was limited to just 29.2 innings in 2024. So, Jeremy, I guess your kind of big picture reaction to this, and is the health a concern? Because it also came up as an issue when he was with the Twins in that stretch between 2020 and 2022.
Yeah, I think the health has to be a concern, right? I mean, when he was with the Twins before, and they actually kind of, I'm not going to say they were counting on him, but he seemed to be part of the plans. He had the big hip thing that he
Mm-hmm.
basically missed an entire season with. Um, 35 years old, undersized lefty. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're a lefty and you can be available, there's value there. So
Yep.
um, he was really good for the Orioles, and they got him for basically nothing from the Twins in 2023. And then, like you mentioned, very limited in 2024. So I do think it checked the box for what are they going to do with the lefty. And I think Funderburk is much better slotted now and not the number one spot for lefty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that takes a little bit of pressure. But Danny Coulomb is a serviceable lefty out of the bullpen, and I think we kind of saw Caleb Thielbar's stock drop, um,
100%.
and so adding Danny Coulomb there, and obviously, one thing that we haven't talked a ton about is with the rules changing, having that loogie doesn't exist,
Yep.
right? So he's going to be forced to face left-handed hitters and right-handed hitters, just like right-handed pitchers are going to be forced to face left-handed hitters. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think they've set their bullpen up in such a way that they feel good about it. There's some depth there,
Yep.
but you also have question marks because Coulomb's not been healthy recently. Brock Stewart's not been healthy ever. Duran's velo dropped. There's just a lot of stuff that I think there's question marks. But if you add depth and you have the 11, 12, 13, 14 guys in your, lined up, there's a good chance that you'll be able to make it through the year uh, with a shot, right, to make it to the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs.
For sure. And I really appreciate that point that you hit on, Jeremy. I think it's worth repeating almost, right? Like in the midst of when the transactions are happening, it's so easy to get caught up in who is going to be the odd man out in the bullpen. Is it going to be Michael Tonkin or Iverson Castellanos? And the truth is, it's going to be the 2 to 3 injured guys that aren't able to start the season on time. And I'm curious for your thoughts here, but it feels like not only do the Twins have a high quality group, if you look at the back end of Jax Duran, Sands, and those guys, they also have now built out enough depth where you could manage comfortably with 2, 3, 4 guys out and not see that much of a dip. As long as you're not losing all of your back end or high leverage guys, it feels like they can absorb some of the punches that will inevitably come in spring training and beyond.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question is the 40-man question, right? Because now they're going to have to make a move there. You don't have the luxury right now.
Two, right?
What?
Two moves, right? I think.
Right. I mean, we haven't talked about the second move, but they're going to have to make the move. And looking at who it could be, I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say fat on the roster, but that's always interesting because you're giving up on someone that you kept through the pairing of the roster in the fall, right?
Yep.
So is it possible that someone like Brent Hedrick, or you mentioned Michael Tonkin, those guys are like, you're likely going to be DFA'd. Teams are pretty much filling up their 40, so guys that would have the opportunity to clear waivers a little bit better now. But yeah, I think I'm not worried at all about the 26 because that works itself out. Guys show up to spring training, they get behind. I will just throw them on the injured list to start. It's fitting everybody on your 40-man. A 40-man that, if we count Gasper as a catcher, has 5 catchers, which is insane.
Yep.
So is this a precursor to a Christian Vasquez move?
It's interesting, and in order to deepen that conversation, right, I suggest we move to today's move, Jeremy, because I think this one maybe came as a surprise. Not that they made a second move, and not necessarily the player archetype that they agreed with, but maybe, and this is what I want to ask you about first, the cost. So today the Twins turn back around and they sign right-handed hitting outfielder Harrison Bader to a 1-year deal with a mutual option for 2026. And that deal has a base salary of $6.25 million. I believe it can reach up to $8 million with incentives. Mutual option, which is not going to be exercised. Those are almost always declined. But I'm curious, first of all, before we dig into Bader a little bit more, did you have any sticker shock from this deal? Was it more expensive than you anticipated the Twins would invest in that right-handed hitting outfielder, platoon bat, defensive replacement in that role?
Yeah, I mean, it was for a couple of reasons. There had been rumors floating of what the Twins had left to spend, and they spent half of it yesterday.
Right.
You look at some of the other guys that recently signed contracts, and they got less. And so 6.25 for him. I mean, he's coming off a year where he made 10.5 for the Mets. But even like, and I like to look at like similarity scores and things on Baseball Reference just to get an idea. It's not something that you really love. Like, who's John Shelby and why is he so much like Harrison Bader? But I do think that it's a nice depth add. But depth adds for $6.25 million, seems kind of spendy. But again, 1-year deal. Twins feel good about it.
Yeah.
And I do think, I told you there's going to be no moves. There's been 2 moves. I can't imagine that it's the end. I don't think there's going to be any like real big fun moves. But I do think they'll continue to do some work around the edges of the roster, because that's what this is, right? A left-handed relief pitcher, a 4th outfielder type. These are moves you make around the edge of your roster. Did they probably need to, in a lot of people's opinions, make some move more to the meaty part, the good part of the roster? Yeah, probably. But this is what we get. This is what we see, and I think Bader's a good addition. I still think, the big question is who's playing first, because I don't know that we have that answer. I don't know that guy's on the roster unless it's just going to be some combination of Miranda and Julian.
Yep.
But that seems,
I think that's what it is, dude.
That seems interesting. So I could see another move like that on the kind of the periphery of the even on the periphery of the 40-man being a minor league deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where and I think they did sign some guy from like the Yankees that could maybe work into things. But yeah, it's a disappointing off season from the move perspective, but the Central's awful.
The Central is awful. Here's a couple of thoughts about Bader just to deepen the conversation before we move on, right? And so one thing that I think makes him a little different from other fourth outfielder signings that they have made in recent years, and they've done this pretty much every year the past few. The most recent iteration of that was Manny Margot,
Yep.
who famously couldn't pinch hit.
Michael Taylor.
Michael A. Taylor. They wanted defensive surety out of Manuel Margot as a backup for Byron Buxton, and it was very evident as soon as he showed up that he wasn't that. Harrison Bader is absolutely a legitimate center fielder who has accrued a ton of defensive value in his time in his career. 1 Gold Gloves, not that those are interesting. A ton of defensive WAR, great range, can play all the outfield spots, etc. And so one thing that I do take comfort in is that this is a quality defensive replacement for Byron Buxton. What it makes me wonder is, what does that mean for Deshaun Kiersey Jr., who is a glove first center field guy who has elite speed, faster than Bader for sure, who's much younger and cheaper? What does that say for his potential role in 2025? And then to your point around not seeing any flashy moves, one thing that I was thinking when I saw the price of this move was, are we going to see a salary dump? Is that something that's coming in the next few days or weeks, whether that's Paddock, whether that's Vasquez, even whether that might be Willie Castro? And maybe the advantage of a deal like this is now you've done what you could consider, you've checked the bare minimum boxes for the offseason, right? You've got that lefty reliever, you've got that backup outfielder, and now you can make a fun move if a value proposition that you like presents itself to you in the remainder of the offseason. And I agree with you that that seems unlikely, but at least they've positioned themselves in such a way where they're not desperate for that type of fun move. They probably feel pretty good about where the roster's at heading into spring.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I think Deshaun Kiersey's ability to play for the Twins, or availability to play for the Twins, is tied directly to Buxton's and Bader's health, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go be a 28-year-old or whatever he is outfielder for the Saints. That's one call away, and I think he sticks because he does play center. I think it probably has a more direct impact on Austin Martin, who's not going to play center. Willie Castro, I think, will play obviously less center. You talked about Bader being able to play all three positions in the outfield, which I think he certainly can do, but he hasn't played any position but center since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that we saw, and I'd have to look this up, it'd be great if Theo was here tonight, because what did Kirby Puckett do in his career after playing center for a long time? He moved to right.
Mm-hmm.
What did Torrey Hunter play after playing center for a long time? He moved to right. And I think left field and target field probably makes more sense. But is this a thing where we could see Byron Buxton not running into center field walls because he's just not playing there sometimes? And I think Buxton's still a better outfielder than Bader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it maybe doesn't make sense, but from like a right now perspective. But if you want to prolong his career and have him play more,
interesting.
Maybe that's a thing that you at least consider. Maybe that's not this year, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Will Walker Jenkins is going to be the center fielder type thing, and then Buxton moves over. But you're committed to a bunch of money for a guy that has had trouble staying on the field, who's 31 years old. He's not getting younger. He's not getting faster, and the walls aren't getting softer.
You know where I thought you were going to go with that, Jeremy, was maybe Bader is also going to spell Wallner and Larnach as their platoon bat in left field and right field as well, given the amount that the Twins are paying him.
I do think that that's an absolute thing, right? That you're going to see one of these right-handed hitting outfielders playing in the corner. I think the assumption is that it's going to be Bader, and that's probably the correct assumption. But I do think there's a chance that we see Byron Buxton man in some left field, because he could catch a lot of balls in left field. And, there is the left field fence, there is the outfield fence, but you just don't see guys running right into the left field wall like you do see him running into the center field wall, at least from my perspective.
Okay. That wraps up a fairly robust off-season updates for this week. One note I'll drop for next week. We just have too busy of a running order today to cover everything. Projected standings are out at Fangraphs as of today, at BP via Pacoda a couple of days ago. So we're going to dig into those for all of the teams that we cover, do a little bit of a rundown of the AL East, NL Central, and AL Central with projected standings next week. But for this week, so originally we were going to do Twins top 10 prospects, but Theo couldn't make it, and we wanted to make sure he could be a part of that. So we're doing something weird, Jeremy, and I'm kind of excited to dig into this with you. We'll see how it goes. So here's the premise for folks listening and or watching at home. We're going to do a draft to build the best possible prospect. It's going to be Jeremy versus me. So what we're going to do, here are the rules. We're only allowed to use the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Twins minor league systems. Okay. And so what each of us has to do is draft a hitter made up of the traditional hitter tools and a pitcher made up of the traditional pitcher tools. So for hitting, those categories are hit, power, arm, field, and speed. And then for pitching, we're going to narrow it down to fastball, changeup, slider, curveball, control. So we're going to take turns. This won't be like a snake draft or anything. I'm going to take turns drafting one of those tools from a guy in either the Cubs, Brewers, or Twins systems. And so here's some of the particulars and where the strategy comes in. After you draft it, after a guy has been drafted for any tool, they are off the board. So let's say we had the Padres organization. If I drafted Luis Arraez's hit tool, he is no longer available to be drafted for anything else. So drafting a tool from a guy takes them off the board. And so where the strategy is going to come in is that there are some categories that are more bare than others across those three systems, some that are stronger. And then there are going to be some prospects that might be relevant in multiple categories, right? And so it'll be interesting to see if someone takes a guy who's good at multiple things off the board as a strategy move. So I'm excited to dig into this with you. I know that you were doing a little preparation for this, Jeremy, because you sent me text messages about this at like 6:45 this morning. So are you good to go? Are you ready? Are you feeling confident?
Well, yeah. I mean, so basically our goal is to build Shohei Ohtani, right?
In the aggregate, exactly.
Right. And so my question for you was, if we took a player, a versatile player, if we could then later like change the tool that we're using, because then there would be more motivation. There would be more value in our versatile players, right? There's zero value in taking someone versatile aside from the fact that it takes away from the categories that you're not using. And so you said, nope, once they're in, they're stuck. And I'm like, that's fine. We'll do that. I think there would be more strategy involved if it was the other way.
So this is the inaugural, right? So we're going to try it this way, and then we'll see how people like it, and we'll make tweaks for the next time we do this if this ends up being a popular thought exercise.
Okay.
Now, what we didn't discuss at all, Jeremy, is who's going to go first.
Okay. I have a coin. I have a coin. Do you want to call it in the air?
I'll call it in the air. Okay, go.
Okay, I'm gonna try not to lose my coin.
Okay, tails.
Dark here. Okay.
Tails.
You say tails. I'm not gonna move my camera, but trust me on this.
Okay,
it's tails.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So you
Amazing.
draft first.
Okay, so this is just like a strictly taking turns thing. We are also going to give a little bit of a rationale for our picks along the way. I'm also going to take notes so that we don't duplicate prospects.
I printed off a list, bro.
Oh, look at you. It's just like draft season.
Always ready with a list.
I got to tell you, dude, look, this is the first time I've had handwritten material for our podcast. First time ever in 67 episodes. Okay, there are a couple of categories that I feel like are bare in this draft. And one of them is fastball, and that's where I'm going first. So I'm taking Jacob Mizralski's fastball. I also feel like he's at least competitive in a breaking ball category as well. So I'm going to start off Mizralski's fastball and take that off the board.
Okay, so if I would have had the first pick,
okay,
I would have taken the exact same thing.
Interesting.
Because in my opinion, he's the only 80 grade tool that's on the board. Although I considered, had I had first pick, taking his curveball, which is kind of crazy because we always talk about fastball slider, but taking his curveball because in my opinion, that's the category I thought was the weakest. And so now it's even weaker because his curveball is off the board. And now it gets interesting because to me, there's a whole bunch of 70s, 65s, 60s, like debatable. And so
I'm already enjoying this very much.
What I'm going to do is take the best overall prospect that's available and take him for what I would consider his best tool.
Okay.
And that's take Walker Jenkins for his hit tool.
Okay. I like that strategy. That makes a lot of sense. I do think you have taken the best hit tool available, at least. And right, like, I think it's also worth noting the moment in time, right? This is like pre-spring training 2025. If we're to do this midsummer, I bet our drafted players would yield a completely different outcome.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Now I'm really a bit not in a bind, just having a moment of deliberation. Okay. There's another pitching category that I feel like is extremely weak, and you brought it up. It's curveball. So I'm going to get what I consider to be the best remaining curveball from these systems, and I'm going to take Josh Noth's curveball with my second pick, which I'm going to put like a 6+ on.
Right, and I think that's fair. It's interesting because we can talk more about that, but I do find that to be I love Josh Noth, so that's
so when I was doing my prep, I was not enamored with a ton of curveballs in all three of these systems. I do not have as deep a list for that as I do for several other categories. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yep. No, I get that. So I actually don't love doing this, but I feel like I have to because it's, oh, you know what? I'm going to change my mind on that one because I'll get it later. All right. I'm going to take, in my opinion, the best power available, which I don't even, I'm going to take Owen Casey for his power.
Ooh. Okay.
Because I have a lot of questions about the overall hit tool, the swing and the miss. And I do think there are other good options as far as that tool goes, right? Which you don't have to take now. But I think the other guys that are potentially drafted there could go in other categories as well. So it's Owen Casey for me.
Makes a
for
lot of
his
sense.
power tool. And if I had a guy that was had a hit tool like Walker Jenkins and a power tool like Owen Casey, I feel like I'm on my way to Shohei.
You're doing well. You're doing well. Hard to argue with that. Oh lordy. Okay, there is definitely a fork in the road here of whether to continue building my super pitcher or do we take a fork in the road?
Your super pitcher, hilariously, is worse than Jacob Mizorowski's overall.
Stop.
Think about that.
I'm not done, Jeremy.
No, but at this point in time, you've actually gotten worse than what you were after one pick.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna stick with my strategy. I'm not gonna succumb to your heckling from your basement there. I'm going to. Okay, so you took power. You took power. That's interesting. You've also taken hit, and I will concede that you have two of the best of those. However, I also do think they are two of the more deep lists that I have on my board, and so for that reason, I'm gonna
because they're easy to tell.
I'm gonna hold off on that, and I'm gonna get what I think. I'm gonna get another 7, and I think it's the only 7 available in the changeup category, and I'm getting Craig Yoho's changeup from the Brewers, ready-made Devin Williams replacement parachute changeup. So my pitcher now has Jacob Mizorowski's fastball, Josh Noth's curveball, and Craig Yoho's changeup, and it's back to you for your third pick.
Okay, I was going to take this guy with the last pick, and then I didn't.
Okay.
Because I didn't think you'd go 3 straight pitchers, which you did. And for me, there's 2 guys that I think stand out with control, and I'd be happy with either one. Okay. But you can't argue with Zebby's control.
Fair.
And so I'll take him, and I know who you'll take in that category, and you'll be very happy to do it, which is cool. But
I'm like between 3 guys in that category, but I agree that Zebby is by far the best, just like pure strike thrower, I would say. There's a couple of close ones.
Which is, if I'm going to start any pitcher, I'm starting them with the ability to throw it over the plate.
Fair enough. Okay, so you've gone mix and match strategy. For me, I've gone pitcher heavy. It is time, I think, to deviate from that strategy a little bit. And I'm going to take another tool that I think is unique, Jeremy, for my hitter. And it's not a tool that I gravitate towards, but it is a tool that this organization emphasizes and does extremely well at the big league level. Now I'm going to take my speed guy. So there's a separator for me for speed, and it's Braylon Payne from the Brewers, their first-round draft pick from 2024. Absolute burner, elite speed, probably but a 70 on his run tool. So Braylon Payne is going to be my first category for my hitter. Good luck finding someone faster.
I think there are guys that are just fast. Okay, so I feel like I need to do this because it's me, and I got to stick to what I believe. And despite the fact that Baseball America says he doesn't have the best slider in the Twin system. Okay. I'm gonna start building my pitcher after he's got great control.
I know what you're doing.
I'm taking Connor Prelip slider, and he's gonna be my dude.
Yep. I like that one. Jeremy. Elite spin rate on that slider from pre-lip. Struck out 42% of guys in the minors last year. Should start this season at AA, 3,000 RPMs plus on that slider from pre-lip. That is without a doubt. I think that's undergraded by. Did you say Baseball America? That was
Baseball America doesn't have him as the best slider in the organization.
That is interesting. Okay, so quick recap. You've got Jenkins hit, Casey power, Connor pre-lip slider, Zebby control. I have Braylon Payne speed, Jacob Mizraelski fastball, Craig Yoho changeup, Josh Noth curveball. I'm staying away from categories that you have already covered.
Makes sense.
And there is one more that, to me, Jeremy feels bare or barren on the hitting side. Again, it is not maybe the sexiest tool, but defense is another category that I'm not enamored with in all three of these systems. And I think there's one of two possible paths here.
Okay.
But I'm going to go for the guy who I put at the top of the Brewers list. My prospect is heavily Brewers favoring right now. I'm going Jefferson Queiroz defense. Putting a 60 on that. Just really solid overall defensive skill. I realized in this exercise that like envisioning catcher defense as part of an overall hitter is kind of goofy, but you get the idea. Jefferson Queiroz, excellent defender. I'm locking him in with a 6 on defense for me.
I love that you want your catcher to be the fastest guy in the field.
Hey,
because that's what you've done.
That's what I've done. Hey, we didn't say I had to. We didn't say I had to be logical. We just said it had to be good. So
it's it's Frankenstein, so it's not logical anyway. But if you want to have Braylon Payne's speed in your catcher, I say that because I make fun only because that was my pick.
Was it really? Excellent.
Yeah, that was
good to know that I sniped you at least once.
You did snipe me. So that to me was the weakest category. The changeup, very weak. So I'm going to stay away from them anyway, because to me it's like that. Those are going to be like one tool guys anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me doesn't really do it. What I am going to do, don't need to do that either. That's perfect.
Are we at the point where we're not going to cross over? No, there is at least a category where neither of us have somebody yet.
There's one category where neither of us have arm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gotta do a little quick research here because.
Okay, while Jeremy's doing that, I'm quickly going to recap where we are so far. So Jeremy's hitter has Walker Jenkins hit tool, Owen Casey's power. His pitcher so far has Connor Prelip's slider and Zebby Matthews control. My hitter has Jefferson Queiroz defense and Braylon Payne's speed. My pitcher has Jacob Mizraelski's fastball, Craig Yoho's changeup, and Josh Noth's curveball.
All those things are true. So what I'm going to do here is I actually had, I don't even know if he's on their prospect list here as I look at.
That's even more fun if you get a guy from down list as one of the loudest tools, because that is a possibility for me in a later category that I'm ignoring for now.
So you took Yoho's changeup.
Mm-hmm.
The best changeup that I was able to find was Nick Dean. Okay, I don't know a whole lot about Nick Dean, and you're smirking. Okay,
yeah.
Why are you smirking?
I'm smirking. You're locking in Nick Dean. That's cool. Continue on, and then I'll tell you why I'm smirking.
So as I'm researching this, I'm like, I got to find a changeup. I got two guys' names listed for changeups, and Nick Dean's one of them. and he's a 24-year-old who's in through 90 innings between 2A levels for the Cubs. And so I'm going to take Nick Dean's changeup because why wouldn't I?
Why you wouldn't, Jeremy? That's your first mistake, in my opinion, of the evening, because Logan Henderson's changeup was on the table for you, and I feel like that might be a half step above Dean's. Admittedly, not super familiar either with Nick Dean, but Logan Henderson was the guy who I had down second for a changeup.
Okay.
So, okay, right on.
So
I'm
let
still
me. Okay. You do your thing while I do a little more research.
okay. Okay. So let's see. I think we're at a point now where one of us has taken every single category, and so we're not kind of crossing over. There's no danger here of repeats. So now we're just
nobody's taking an offensive arm.
oh.
But I will tell you this: Fangraphs has Nick Dean present value 60 on his changeup, future value 70.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. You know what? You get extra credit for researching further down the list. I know that there's going to be Brewers people listening to this advocating for Logan Henderson, but that's cool. Nick Dean, I wasn't familiar with your game. I need to watch some highlights clearly. Okay, so you are right that no one has an arm. I'm going to take a little bit of a risk and actually stay away from that category and just start to fill in with what I feel like are the best tools. I feel like there's a cluster of arms that I can live with here remaining. And I'm looking for the highest graded tools I have. So I'm going to power. You took Owen Casey. I was between Owen Casey and my guy. I'm going with the hitter who had the highest 90th percentile exit velocity of any top 100 prospect, and that is Emmanuel Rodriguez. 70 grade raw power, 110, 90th percentile exit velocity, tops of any top 100 guy. Erod's going to be my power. Honorable mention to Eric Batanti, who I also considered.
Yeah, Erod's got power when he decides to swing.
We'll add swing decisions next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. I came to a team to look up something specific. Oh yeah, okay. So I believe the best. You stayed away from arm.
Mm-hmm.
I considered this arm with the last one. I was trying to see if I could find any player with an arm that was similar, and I can't. And this player was not good hitting last year.
You're gonna snipe my guy, I think.
In fact, he was garbage, but I do believe he's got the best arm. And while your guys playing, defense at catcher, I'm not gonna draft a catcher, but I'm gonna take the defensive arm.
No.
Of Brock Wilken.
Okay, I can live with that. He's on my list, though. He's on my list.
We should be because he's got the best arm.
So I'm staying away from arm for now, and I'm going way down the board on an arm later who I think can rival Wilken. Okay. But we'll save that surprise. Okay, we'll do one more pick each, and then I think we'll do a recap of where our players are at. Okay, so what do I have left? On my hitter, I need hit and an arm. We just said we're going to stay away from that. I need a slider, and I need control for my pitcher. I'm going to go slider because it's the best graded pitch I have left. And there's actually a guy who I brought up. He's a little bit down list. He made the back end of my Cubs top 10, or was at least an honorable mention. I'm going Jack Neely's slider. Really, really elite pitch. Sits in the 87 to 89 mile per hour range. Had a 31% swinging strike rate in 2024. That is hard to top. He's a two pitch guy, going to be working in relief. But Jack Neely is a literal monster, an enormous dude. I'm going for Jack Neely's slider to add to my pitching repertoire.
Yeah, I actually I had that on my list too. So this other guy I'm looking at, I'm not going to take him because he's another one that's down on the list. And I'll pull that out later. I think that's a good pick later.
Okay.
Let me see this guy. I just want to do one more check here. Yeah. So I don't like this prospect. I've said this probably more than I should because I don't really have any reason to not like him. I just thought it was a bad draft pick at the time, and I thought that you overranked him when you ranked him in your list. But I think Jackson Wiggins has the best fastball available.
Yep.
And so I'm going to put that on. You got a guy with an 80 grade fastball. Wiggins is probably 65 or 70, probably 65.
Mm-hmm.
But he's topped out at 99 before he got hurt in college. And I think he's kind of worked his way back there. So Jackson Wiggins fastball. I like that so far.
Yeah, dude. I love that pick. Just giving you props of that one. Wiggins was my second name I had written down after Mizorowski. And, we talked about that right from the jump, that fastball felt like a thin category. We both probably would have gone the same route for number one, both based on the quality of the tool and the scarcity of that tool. So I love the Wiggins pick, and I love that you waited this long to do it. Okay, so a quick recap before we each make three more picks. So your hitter so far has Walker Jenkins' hit tool, Owen Casey's power, and Brock Wilkins' arm. Your pitcher has Jackson Wiggins' fastball, Nick Dean's changeup, Connor Prelip's slider, good Lord, and Zebby Matthews' control. My hitter has Emmanuel Rodriguez's power, Hefson Queiroz' defense, and Braylon Payne's speed. My pitcher has Jacob Mizorowski's fastball, Craig Yoho's changeup, Jack Neely's slider, and Josh Noth's curveball. We both have, 3 picks left, so we'll make these. Then we'll recap both of our guys, and we'll ask people to vote on who built the best prospect of each player type. So now we're just looking at what tools do we have left that we like. I need a hit tool, I need an arm, and then I need control and command on my pitcher. I'm going to take my hit tool first. I think there are a lot of winners here. In fact, I'm going to take some extra time to think about my hit tool because I'm stuck between two guys. Okay. I'm actually going to move to arm Jeremy, and I'm going way down list. And I think this is going to put some people off my hitter, maybe, but I don't care. I'm going back to the catcher position, and I'm taking Pablo Aliendo's arm from the Cubs system. He has an absolute howitzer. If you haven't had a chance, take a look and watch him throw. Pablo Aliendo, one of the best arms in a category with, I would argue, a lot of kind of parity. Like I have 5 or 6 guys on my list, including Brock Wilken, who you took, Pablo Aliendo, catcher from a little bit further down in the Cubs system, is going to be my arm.
I mean, it makes sense that you take a catcher arm with your catcher defender. Right? That's your like your premium position. So great. That's not what I would do, but and this isn't super fun. Actually, maybe let's make it fun. No, let's be smart here. So your guy is a catcher. My guy is not going to be a catcher. And so I'm going to find a very good outfield defender.
Okay.
And in
I
my
like where this is going.
in my opinion, there's some more attractive names like Alcantara as a defensive outfielder would be like fun, right? Because he's a top 10 prospect in their system.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go old on this, and a name that
Okay.
we actually mentioned earlier in the show, because Deshaun Kiersey, in my opinion,
Ooh, love.
is probably legitimately the best defensive prospect, outfield that's available. So maybe would have been from a prospect view better to go with Alcantara, who I think is probably a C defender,
Mhm.
but I think Kiersey's better than that.
I
Right?
love that. I love that
Maybe
pick.
65 without a lot of ceiling, but he's going to be a center fielder. I'll get the wheels from somebody else because he also would have been a great choice for base runner. But I
100%.
got two other names that are definitely not draftable for you, and so I like where I'm going there, even though it's a little less fun.
Dude, I love that. But no, I actually think that's more fun, honestly, right? You know, I was thinking about what I was prepping here was how Noah Miller would have been an absolute lock for this exercise if he was still with the Twins with the shortstop defense. Like, he was like the best defense in the minor leagues.
Yep.
So I love the Kiersey pick. I think it's great to recognize a guy who's lower down the list who has one or two elite tools. Kiersey has two. Agree, he would have been a fit on the speed too. I think that's a great pick. Okay, I've made my hit tool. I've made my hit tool pick. I think there's a lot of interesting guys to consider here. Thought about a lot. Like, there's just like a slew of guys I considered. Luis Pena, Moises Barrios, Luke Keeschel, Mike Bove, Tyler Black, Jesus Made. I'm going James Triantos. You're a guy from the AFL. To me, that is he is the one who has delivered the greatest level of consistency at the minor league level. His hit tool is absolutely plus, if not a little bit more. So James Triantos is going to round out my hitter. And it's back to you for one of your last picks.
He would have been my hitter had Jenkins,
okay.
Like had you taken Jenkins.
Okay.
Triantos would have been my fallback hitter. I'm gonna go run tool here.
Okay.
And I was between two guys. Once Kiersey was off the board, guys that I considered were Dylan O'Ray for the Brewers, who I think is actually, according to Baseball America, faster than your Braylon Payne guy.
Okay, if you say so.
I mean, that's according to the site. I'm just saying. But I'm going to go with a guy for the Cubs who has no power at all, but is a 70 runner for sure. Okay. And that's Brett Bateman.
Nice.
Who also plays center field, because I'm taking the center fielder, right? I'm trying to be like Shohei when he has a arm that doesn't restrict him to first base. So another not super fun pick. He's a top 25-ish prospect, probably top 30 guy for sure for the Cubs that you could see. MLB has him at 16. I want to see if where does Fangraphs has him at 35. MLB has him for a 70. Fangraphs has him for a 60. But in my opinion, he's the fastest of the players that I have left on my board. So Jenkins hitter, Casey power, Bateman run, Wilkin arm, Kiersey defense.
Very nice.
I like that.
I like that too. Okay, one more tool for each of us, Jeremy, and then we'll do a quick recap of the totality of our dudes, and then we'll put out a poll sometime over the next day or so to get some opinions from other folks and see what they think. My last category left is we call this control, right? And so debated a little bit whether to go with control or command. You took Zebi, who I think is probably the best strike thrower of the bunch. I'm going to I have a couple of names down on my list, but maybe a little bit of a thinner category. I'm going to take a guy who we talked about a ton when we dug into the Cubs system as a riser, and someone who I had pretty high on my board, I think, comparatively to some other lists. And I'm taking Brandon Birdsell for control. Just really strong track record of strike throwing and command. Not that this is a command category, but I think Birdsell is the clear next choice for me after Zebby. What do you think?
Yeah, that was actually the reason that I didn't take Zebby when I was going to, because I'm like,
Right on.
if you take Zebby, it's not a giant step down. Plus, I thought there was the potential that you might even take Birdsell before Zebby. And I was like,
Okay.
do I need to jump the line if I could just get the guy? So I wholeheartedly agree with that pick. In fact, those were the only two guys on my list.
Right on.
For control. I'm going to end this one again with a guy that's not on the list. So names I considered, Marco Raya would be the one if I'm just going to take a top prospect and roll the curveball. But in my research here, again using Fangraphs, has a Cubs prospect who they rank 36th overall in their rankings, who is not listed on the top 30 for MLB, but they give a 26-year-old named Riley Martin a 70 grade curveball. So I'm going to add that to my build a prospect.
Love it.
And we'll go from there.
Okay, let's do a quick recap here because we're coming up on time. You know what we'll do, Jeremy, is we will recap the hitters together and the pitchers together, and then the people can tell us what they think. So your hitter, the hit tool of Walker Jenkins, the power of Owen Casey, the arm of Brock Wilken, the defense of Deshaun Kiersey Jr., and the speed of Brett Bateman. Very nice. My hitter, the hit tool of James Triantos, the power of Emmanuel Rodriguez, the arm of Pablo Aliendo, the defense of Jefferson Cairo, and the speed of Braylon Payne. Really excited to see what people make of that competition. And then on the pitching side, for you, the fastball of Jackson Wiggins, the changeup of Nick Dean, the slider of Connor Prelip, mad that you got that one, the curveball of Riley Martin, and the control of Zebby Matthews. And for me, the fastball of Jacob Mizorowski, the changeup of Craig Yoho, the slider of Jack Neely, the curveball of Josh Noth, and the control of Brandon Birdsell. Dude, that was fun. I enjoyed it.
So what I feel like, you built this prospect on your video game. Right now, you got to put him in your lineup. So mine's a center fielder, clearly. Center fielder / starting pitcher.
That wasn't part of the thought exercise, Jeremy. I don't know what mine is. Mine can barely walk because he has an enormously long right arm. Is a catcher. Well, he has Jacob Mizorowski's right arm, right? If he has that fastball. Yeah, I don't know. True. Your guy's probably a little more consistent looking than mine, but I'll take what I got.
I did think that you were going to take Ballesteros for your hit tool and just
I thought about it.
Make him a chubby catcher with 80 grade speed.
But he was on the list, but Triantos was too good to pass up. But that was fun. If you are listening to this and you enjoyed that thought exercise, let us know. And we'll do more wacky creative stuff like this in the off season while we're waiting for baseball to get started. Next week, when Theo is back, we will do a roundup of projected standings via Fangraphs, via Pacoda, and we will dig into our dueling Twins top 10 lists. And you guys can let us know what you think of those as well. Until then, for Jeremy, I'm Jamie. Take it easy, guys.